Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Lewis, editor of Building Enclosure. Thanks for listening along with us today. The National Building Museum has announced unprecedented access to thousands of artifacts that have been stored behind closed doors, some of them for decades. Visible Vaults Open Collections Storage is a new permanent exhibition that opened to the public on December 14th. It showcases both significant and commonplace historical artifacts ranging from the 1800s to present day. Today, I'm joined by Nancy Bateman, Senior Registrar and Director of Collections for the National Building Museum, to talk about the collection. Nancy, thanks for sitting with us.
Glad to be here.
All right, so firstly, I want to ask, can you tell us where the idea of Visible Vault came from? What's the inspiration behind it?
Well, the National Building Museum was founded over 40 years ago with no collection whatsoever. We were a museum without artifacts when we first opened our doors. And in the last 40 years, we've actually collected over 500,000 artifacts. And most people don't know that we had this collection and didn't get to see it and couldn't really learn about it. So about 5 years ago, we really started to push an initiative to make the collection as accessible as possible. So we started digitizing the collection, photographing it, and getting it online in our online database so people can search from all over the world. But we really wanted people to be able to physically see it in person as well. So we thought up this idea to have an open collection storage, a exhibition space that is filled with artifacts from our collection, telling the story of our collection itself, as opposed to one story of one architect or one designer. It's the story of us and giving people a chance to see as much of our collection as possible.
So, how does the museum come to acquire these artifacts? And is there any sort of like restoration process along with them, or you just acquire them as is?
We get our collection in a lot of different ways. Most of the time, someone approaches us. It may be an architecture firm that is offering us their archives, a photographer that is offering us their body of work. Oftentimes, it's a family member who a grandfather or a grandmother has passed away, and they're looking to find a home for their tools or their toy collection. And then a lot of times we get approached by historic preservation groups that are trying to save a building or restore a building, and they have pieces of the building that they want to preserve, and then they donate them to us. Some of the pieces come in beautiful, perfect shape, and others come in needing conservation work and preservation work done. And we take that into account. Anything we collect, we want to make sure that we can properly take care of. So some of the pieces you'll be able to see in Visible Vault are as they came through the door, and others have been conserved by our partners here in the DC area that have helped us bring them back to their original glory.
Now, looking at some of the artifacts specifically, what are some of your favorite ones that you have?
We have an original set of Lincoln logs. My new bar trivia is that Lincoln logs were designed by John Lloyd Wright, Frank Lloyd Wright's son. And the set that we have is from 1920. It's one of those pieces that did not arrive in pristine shape. It had been used and loved by children and family members for over 100 years. We needed to send it to a conservator to sort of put the box back together. I don't. Most of the toys in my house, the box lids have been smashed, and that's what happened here as well. But I love that original piece. It looks exactly like Lincoln logs look today. They haven't changed the design in over 100 years. And that piece in particular has a young man's name written across the front of the box. And I can imagine that in 1920, young Walter was going to his friend's house, and his mother wrote his name on the box so that he wouldn't forget his Lincoln logs or get them confused with his friends. And it really speaks to the people that have used these pieces. My favorites are these ones that have been used and loved and truly inspiring children or people to look at the world we design and build. And this one, you can see the young man's name and you can see how much he used those toys. And I love that.
I love that story. It adds such like a human touch to something so historical. That's so sweet.
Exactly. I think artifacts are really our connection to the past. And one of the reasons I joined this field is because I really love the idea that you can understand who this person was 100 years ago and they weren't that different from you, and how they were using this piece and being able to tell their story.
Makes me want to put my name on all my kids' toys, or their name on all their toys, just in case it ever ends up in a museum.
We do have a set of ABC blocks in the collection that say like Oliver's First Blocks, 1906. And I had an
Oh,
intern that found it, and my intern's name was Oliver, and he wanted to take them home, and I said no.
now there are obviously objects of all shapes and sizes, I'm assuming. So, looking at some other objects specifically, can you tell us maybe about like the oldest ones, the biggest, the smallest?
So, one of the oldest artifacts in our collection, and the oldest one on display in Visible Vault, is actually from the Renwick Gallery here in Washington, D.C. It is a carved stone column capital that was on the outside of the building when it was built in 1861. And it's one of those pieces where when they were restoring the building, they removed that piece and replaced it with a new one. And so that one came to be part of our collection. So it's the oldest piece we have and one of the largest. It's very heavy as well.
I've read that you have some Frank Gehry artifacts as well. Is that correct?
So we have Frank Gehry artifacts on display here at the museum, not in the Visible Vault exhibition,
Okay.
but we have an exhibition up right now about Frank Gehry's work in southeastern Pennsylvania. And in that exhibition, we have his drafting desk and table that he used, and we also have pieces that he designed for falling water, for specific furniture pieces for that space that are on display now, which are again a great connection to. I consider Frank Lloyd Wright sometimes as sort of an abstract idea. He's so famous, and it's wonderful to be able to see his specific pieces that he used and designed.
I was reading also that there's a portion, I don't know if it's part of this exhibition or maybe it's a different exhibit named Architectural Toy Collection.
It is part of our of this exhibition, yes.
Right. Can you tell us about what kind of objects are in that portion? That's such an interesting title.
So our architectural toy collection was donated in 2006. It was all collected by one gentleman. And it is over 2,000 architectural toys. So toys that children would use to explore the world we design and build, which includes sort of ABC blocks, which are how to build words and how to actually build a structure when you stack them on top of each other. We go into the Lincoln logs as well. And then there's all these knockoff ones like American logs, and Canadian logs, and colonial logs. Um, there's Tinker toys as well. We go into erector sets, mechano sets, and then all the way up into like early Lego pieces from the 1960s. So it covers a breadth of time from about 1880 to 1960, 1970. And it again is really showing these ways that children have been inspired to design and build from the youngest of ages with those ABC blocks all the way up into the really complicated erector sets and Lego sets that we use today.
Now, can you tell us a bit about the Esri story map? How does that work and what experience does that give to the viewer as we're walking through the exhibition?
So, one of the main goals for the exhibition was to get some of our very large architectural pieces on display. These are entire facades of buildings, or dormer windows, or just really large pieces that we wanted to get out of storage and needed to build into walls in order to put on display. And we also have a number of artists' maquettes and designs for larger pieces as well, and that are out in America. So we wanted to have these pieces on display, but they're a bit disconnected if you're just looking at a window on display in a museum. So we wanted to find a way to give people the opportunity to relate those back to the actual buildings and pieces that they came from. And we partnered with Esri. They're an amazing group that do geo mapping. And you're able to look at the artifact there, and then through a QR code, it will take you to the Esri site, and you can see a picture of that window or facade piece actually on the original building, and you can see the building itself, where it is in America or in the world, and the history of the building, and just do a deeper dive into that piece and into that story.
Now, Visible Vault will be on display permanently. So, what was the behind the decision to keep this around for the long haul?
Um, it is a permanent exhibition, which is very exciting, and was a big ask to the museum governing board. but they were completely behind it. There were a number of goals for this. One is to truly have more storage space. We were running out of permanent collection storage space and we needed more room. And again, to get these really large pieces on display that could only be safely displayed if they were built into the walls. And it would be dangerous to be putting them up for a year and then taking them back down. And we just really wanted to commit to giving people access to our collection, as much access as possible at any given time. And so it was decided to dedicate 2,500 square feet of the museum's gallery space to permanently give our visitors that access. And so they can learn more about our collection and more about the built environment.
Well, the National Building Museum is always doing amazing things. I love reading about it. My goal is to get there one day. I'm in Detroit, so I'm just going to have to,
Oh
hike
my
on
goodness.
over to DC one of these days. But what else is the museum working on this year? What's on the horizon?
Behind the scenes in collections, I must always give a plug. We're continuing to digitize. We just got a wonderful grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences to digitize one of our architectural drawing collections. So we're getting busy behind the scenes, scanning and documenting that. Um, we are heading into the country's 250th anniversary. So we are working on a number of exhibitions commemorating the past of American architecture and really looking to the future and our future cities as well. So right now we have exhibitions on Frank Lloyd Wright here in just up the road in Pennsylvania, and another exhibition on brutalist architecture, which DC is rather famously known for, and how those buildings could be reimagined for different use and new use. And we have our Building Stories exhibition, which is also about the architecture of children's books and how that teaches children very early on about the world we design and build. And of course, I have to say that we have our Lego exhibition up as well, which features structures from all 7 continents. I dare everyone to try to find the one from Antarctica. And that also invites people in to explore and then to actually build with Legos as well. So we're really looking to the past with the Frank Lloyd Wright pieces. We're looking at our present with the DC Brutalism, and then into the future as well.
Well, thank you again, Nancy, for your time today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
If anyone listening has any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Nancy. We'd love to continue the conversation. Until next time, visit us on buildingclosureonline.com for your educational and technical resources.